Well, I watched the Brant Rock fire from the top of Wrexham Hill, and you could see the sheet of flame that was gobbling up the houses as the fire tore southerly along the beach area. Um, and it was very impressive because the fire traveled fairly fast. There was a high wind that day, and um, the sheets of flame would jump from house to house, and then they'd come to a street, and it would be a whole mass of flames as it jumped the street and carried on down the beach there until it got to Samoset Beach, Samoset Road, um, when the wind amazingly changed, and the firemen were able to put out the fire at that point. But by that time, it had burned from Fieldston all the way down to Samoset Street. But in a fortunate way, if anything can be said to be fortunate about the fire, it was brought to a halt by the fact that the wind changed, and then it became history, and we've been talking about it ever since. And
I believe somewhere in the vicinity of 300 houses were burned.
something like that. I'd say around 300.
Yeah, but actually, in our book, we do have the exact number of cottages that were burned. I believe it was around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon when it completely died. As Cynthia said, the wind died down and saved Brant Rock from actually, it was on its way to Brant Rock. If it had gone down there, it certainly could have swept all the way to Cut River and the marsh out there. But I basically remember one instant when the casino broke into this huge mass of flames. There was on top of the hill right there at Ocean Bluff, there was a huge casino, which a casino was a place of meeting, probably 2 or 3 stores in there. And they sold ice cream, they sold all kinds of things. And upstairs at the casino was a dance floor. My mom and dad used to dance practically hours on end in that casino. It was really a very, very sort of swish place for Brant Rock and Ocean Bluff.
I don't remember the casino part of it at all.
Yeah.
But then I was upwind of it all.
You probably had a very different view than
Yes,
I did. When it went, it was huge. It took up the whole parking lot where the Brant Rock, where the Ocean Bluff post office is today. That was the place that casino stood on. Casino.
It was just casino.
That's all we ever called it, was casino. I don't know whether the old pictures would show another name, but I doubt it. It was a casino at the Ocean Bluff. There wasn't one quite as large as that at Brant Rock, but there was a very large building there, which eventually housed the old movie theater at Brant Rock, which and downstairs, I believe there was an ice cream place. It was almost next to Estes Candy Kitchen, which was probably the most famous candy kitchen anywhere around. It was they had the most wonderful popcorn, and Mr. Estes owned it, and he had this huge pot they cooked the popcorn in, which was copper. And I believe it still exists. There's somebody in Brant Rock that owns that wonderful copper pot. It's Sean. He kept it just in beautiful condition. And you walk into this store, and that's all you saw was this wonderful popcorn popper that big.
And people from North Marshfield never ventured down to the beach, or
You always came to the beach for popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
And they had these little bags of popcorn. There was one for 5 cents. There was one for 10 cents. I don't think there was a bigger bag, but he twisted the end of these little bags, and they were fascinating. You remember him
Oh,
doing
yeah.
it? He
I
would
do
take
that.
the bag and
Oh, yeah, I remember
whirl
that.
it around. It was
Yeah.
a brown paper bag, like we have big ones today, but these were 5 and 10 cent ones. Then he had wonderful popcorn bars, and they were long bars made out of the popcorn, about that long, and he had pink ones, which were what do you call
Kind of peppermint.
uh,
Where?
it wasn't peppermint. They called them something else. The old name for something.
I know what you mean.
There was one that was chocolate. There was one that was white. There was one that was
Those were the three colors. The
yeah.
pink ones, the white ones.
Neapolitan.
Were they what?
Neapolitan.
Neapolitan is what they call it.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
no, never heard of that. But it was just open in the summertime, and people came from all around to go to Estes Candy Kitchen. And he had this wonderful little bar of fudge that he made. I believe it was something like maybe 10 cents for a bar of fudge, but it was marvelous. And that's all he carried in there, plus the candy kisses. And he had every kind that you could think of. And he made them right there in the building. And the candy kisses were wrapped in appropriate molasses. Of course, was made in sort of a yellow-brown container. Was covered in a yellow and brown paper.
Each of the little coloring.
Oh yes. And then there were pink ones and red ones, and all sorts of candy kisses.
I can remember when they twisted them.
Yeah.
He'd pull it.
Yeah, he twisted those
It was
too.
fascinating for kids to watch the taffy being whipped around.
And the building stood right there, just next door to the fish market. And of course, most people know where the fish market is because it still stands today.
Because of Henry.
And Henry's Fish Market. Henry, who went to Amherst College and ended up selling fish in Brant Rock. I don't think Henry was a Marshfield person, but I'm not really aware of that. And Henry's still alive down there today. He's sort of a fixture in old Brant Rock. And Brant Rock became well known all over the place. It was the place the towns surrounding Marshfield went to in the summertime to enjoy a day at the beach. One of the big things you did if you went to Sunday school in any of the old churches around here was a Sunday school trip to Brant Rock in the summer if you were a child, because sometimes it was the only time a child got to go to the beach was when they went with their Sunday school class. So that was perhaps a little more important than religion at that time. But it was, and then eventually the movies came along. I believe they had talkies there in the beginning, didn't they?
Yeah.
And eventually it became the movie theater, which was upstairs in this huge building. And downstairs was the bowling alley. So as you sat there watching a love scene, all of a sudden you would hear the crash of the bowling alleys downstairs, right in the middle of it. I can remember that.
Yes, oh yes, I remember that very well.
Do you remember any of the movies you saw there?
Oh, well, I think I saw Snow White there. I don't know, maybe you do, Cynthia. But during the war, of course, we were at the beach during the war. We had a blackout down there. And of course, the blackout was so severe that you didn't go out too much after dark. And And that's where actually I celebrated the end of the war. Uh, I believe it was the European war that we got the message it was over. And I can remember great celebration in the streets down there. And there were several wonderful places to eat down there. One was Sandy's, up on the corner, right across from the Brant supermarket, was a wonderful restaurant, Sandy's. I worked there when I was 16. And Joan Sleeper was another person who worked there. She was a Marshfield person also. And I think probably some of the Staples worked there. And in fact, I know they did. It was a place where young girls would work. And the Coast Guard station was in the empty lot right there across from the little chapel on the waterfront was the old Coast Guard station, which now has been removed. And of course, then we had the famous Brant Rock that stuck out into the water there. So there was no jetty across there at all. So the thing you did was go out on Brant Rock and then let the tide come in around, which it did. You had to swim in. So that was an exciting thing you did.
When did the sub tower appear?
The tower was put up. Is that your question? That was put up during World War II to watch for submarines.
During the war.
During the war. And as many towns on the coast had a tower built, I believe there's a couple up in Scituate.
And so, Cynthia, going back to something last time with Girl Scouts, were you a holly troop or a pine troop?
Whoa.
Your book says there was the pine troop and the holly troop for Girl Scouts. Which one were you?
Oh, I suppose it was the pine troops. I don't really remember that.
That's ancient history.
I remember later when we became mariners, there was a senior category of Girl Scouting, which called its troop the Mariner Troop, and ours was named the Smyrna for a ship that used to regularly trade with Smyrna in Turkey. And my mother taught that for a while, actually. But the Mariner Troop was a great fun part of the Girl Scouting movement here, being a seaside town and everything. And the costumes, we loved their uniforms. I should call them uniforms. Were bright blue with stripes all the way down the side of them. We felt very much in the service of our country. So, anyway, one of the things I wanted to mention about the fire was when it was all over and we did have a chance to go down and see what the ruins really were. And we were, as I said, I think, one of the first people to go in. But among other things that burned, which was most everything, one of the fire engines burned.
Oh,
Did
yes.
you see the fire engine?
Oh, yes.
And many of the photographers of that era were intrigued by the fact that the fire engine itself had burned. So we talked about that a lot. It was all over the news that the fire engine was gone.
Actually, we were let in the next day, not the day that you went, but my family went the next day.
Mm-hmm.
You can see how important that Marshfield Hills was.
Well, yes, of course.
And Marshfield Hills always was a little one step above North Marshfield. And actually, we were let in, and of course, all we had left were the old iron beds. And I can remember seeing the pots, bedroom pots that we kept under the bed because, of course, we had no bathrooms down
bathroom
there at that
facilities.
time. Yeah, and that was about all we had left. And so we had lost not only one house in the storm of 1898 at Fieldston, but we lost the second one in the fire. So my father said, about this point, he said, "Oh, no way are we going to build another house." So, he said, "I'll build you a trailer that we all can sleep in." So that's what my father did. And I spent my childhood actually at Blackman's Point in a trailer that my father had built, all because of the fires at Brant Rock and Ocean Bluff and Fieldston. Brant Rock had several big fires, but nothing compared to the fire of 41.
Who do you think is the most influential or interesting person in Marshfield history?
The past or the present? Or it doesn't matter.
All of history.
You're famous just to live in Marshfield is to be famous in some way. Oh, I would think that it has to be Edward Winslow. He was the founder of the town, the kind of discoverer of Marshfield, and then he became later on the very important part of the Pilgrim life in the Plymouth colony. He took on the role of being a salesman, so to speak, for the colony, a diplomat that carried on much of the important conversation with the Indian troop, with Massasoit and Massasoit's sons, and he was really responsible for starting the let me see, there was something called the propagation for the Christian faith among the Indians, and he founded this in London. You can look up the trail he made in London. Let me see. He was Edward Winslow was what they call him, not president of the colony, but he was governor. Yeah, he was governor of the Plymouth colony, on and off for many years, and he made trips, four different trips back to England to confer with the authorities there and to raise money that he brought back to the colony here, and to he was just almost everything that the chief diplomat for the colony. He became very friendly with Governor Winthrop of the Massachusetts colony. And because of the actions he took at that very crucial moment in the development of the Plymouth colony, he became known throughout the area and was able to bring the colony along through those first, 30 years or so.
England, why would England have been interested in Marshfield like this general area?
Well, England was at this time developing its mercantile interest and its expansion as a growing area of America, and let me see, what was I going to say? It eludes me. Edward. Oh, then not only was he famous and influential, very influential in the development of Plymouth colony, but his descendants also were very active in the colony. His son Josiah became governor in his time, and he was commander-in-chief of the colonial wars, or the colonial war known as King Philip's War, and that was an important turning point for the Pilgrim colony, since we defeated the Indians and then could put all the efforts of the colony into building. And the successive generations of the Winslow family all contributed a lot to Marshfield. They became either governors or legislators, or in one way or another very important to their particular era. And it was, it was the most prominent, the most prominent ones of Edward Winslow's descendants to so do was the one we call General John Winslow, who had a very important role in the Plymouth colony's part in getting Nova Scotia as a part of the acquisition by the English during a campaign that was, I believe, 1755, the expulsion of the French from Nova Scotia. And that was all under General John Winslow. And then on down through the successive generations of the Winslow family to Dr. Isaac Winslow, the last Winslow to live in the historic Winslow house here in Marshfield. So I consider it a family that it was not only influential in one generation, in the time of one generation, but through successive generations. And they were some of the real doers and shakers of that particular era in our history. And very important for that reason, I can't think of another family that, as a family, over several generations, was that active or that is as important as the Winslow family. Now, of course, there were other influential people who were here for a time, and very influential in their time, such as Daniel Webster. And Nathaniel Ray Thomas and others. So,
Well, you also answered the next question, which was just who was the most influential family in Marshfield. So the next one is, what is the most notable site in Marshfield?
well, if you're going to consider the Winslows were the most important family, I guess you'd consider their house the most important house. But there are many old houses in Marshfield, and in some cases, there's a couple of houses anyway that predate um, the actual 1699 date of the Winslow house. There are, I don't know, several of them. So that it isn't that the house that stands there today, that we call the historic Winslow house, it isn't that it isn't the oldest house in the area, uh, and but I think important, very important because of the people that the Winslows were.
Why is Marshfield called a town of villages, and what is your favorite area in Marshfield?
Well, let me see. I guess my favorite area is still Marshfield Hills. That will always be a big place in my heart. Um, the town of villages, I don't know, Betty and I were talking one day about the work we were doing, and suddenly I said something about, oh, it's up in the village of Marshfield Hills. And with that, it dawned on me, well, that would be a good name for the book, since we're really talking about a lot of little areas of the town, or the villages of Marshfield. And it did catch on as an idea, and I noticed a lot of the new building now in Marshfield picks up the theme of being a village, like Winslow Village down on the Neck Road there, that has apartments, and
Signs.
The high school.
the high school. Well, the high school has sections of it that I call the village, named after each village. In fact, if you ride around Marshfield, there's quite a number of people, merchants, that have picked up the idea of it's a village of a larger entity or town.
It's not only Marshfield, it's all over the country now, the villages. I think sometimes you predated.
Well, I think it was Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
who who was it that said you could build a village?
You could build
I can't remember right now, but anyway, it's appropriate, I find, and I think it catches. I think the gist of the idea that there are 9 villages,
yes,
is intriguing to people. So,
and in writing the book, it was a wonderful way to tackle a book. It's very hard to think of doing the history of a particular town, just starting in at the beginning and going through the town and writing all these nice things about it. But in taking the villages the way we did, we could incorporate not only the landscape, but you could incorporate the history of families within it and how it grew as an individual place. Yep, I always thought it was a wonderful way to tackle the history of this particular town. I think it's been copied again by other towns now,
Yes, it has.
and which is kind of exciting.
Well, it sounds like to a degree they almost were like actual villages because, as you said, each section had a different
Yeah.
industry that it kind of grew about, and that created different
Mm-hmm.
economic classes in each area.
That's
Mhm.
right.
Is maybe a little bit more prominent in Marshfield, these disparity, than it is in other towns. Because
Yeah, my grandfather, who was responsible for the 1940 history of the town, really believed it should be two towns because the area is very much larger than any town around here. I think it's only second only to Plymouth area
Mm-hmm.
wise. And he felt, of course, he was for making Marshfield Hills the the seat of government for the second Marshfield. That was just the way he saw it. But anyway,
is Marshfield Hills and 2 Mile two different places?
Oh,
yes,
definitely.
definitely. But I think if he had been successful doing what he wanted to do, and he was selectman many times, he would have put North Marshfield and Marshfield Hills together.
Oh, he would have. That would have
Yeah.
been nice of him.
Yeah. So
I think that the 2 Mile has the oldest
it has a nice ring to it.
ring to it. I mean, it really was. 2 Mile was settled so early. There were settlements all over town, individual settlements, but that was part of the establishment of a certain area in town that became partly because it was connected with Situate, so close to Situate and the farming that went on here. And of course, the political structure of it was a little different than, say, Brant Rock and Green Harbor came along much later. The Winslows practically owned all of Green Harbor, which is
everything south of the Green Harbor River.
yes.
Mm.
What is your favorite story of Marshfield?
Story?
Yeah.
I didn't understand that.
What is your favorite story of Marshfield?
Oh, favorite story.
Antidote.
Well, I always liked the one about General John Winslow. Um, when he wanted to meet with his friends in Plymouth, and he was running away from the British. He rode his horse from Caswell. That's the name for his estate here. He rode it down over the marshes, swam the rivers, and got down to Plymouth before. It is said that he got down to Plymouth before the the people that had gone by land. I don't know just
Oh,
quite
he
how
was
that
having
was.
they were having a very large party at Caswell.
Right.
People from Plymouth were there, and they had these wonderful house parties, apparently, where the more wealthy groups of people would meet for a weekend or 2 or 3 days during the week. And it was there that he jumped on his horse. He said to the group, "I'll see you in Plymouth." And they said to him, "Well, you can't possibly get there before we do." And so off he took over the marshes and swam the creeks in Plymouth Harbor. He arrived before the people from the Winslow house that were on horseback also, before they even reached the pub in Plymouth. I believe that's the way the storm. It wasn't the British. I think we got that.
That's right. Well, that was the other time.
Yeah, that's one of the other stories. I don't think I have a favorite story of Marshfield myself. I just love Marshfield and the beaches, and one of my favorite spots, I think, is the beach. I love the ocean. Cynthia and I, perhaps, I think we try to go down there about once a day, every day.
Yes, we have to be
It makes us feel better.
stronger.
We go down and look at the ocean, look at the P-Town Monument, which actually you can see from the shore of Marshfield here. This little stick sticking up in the ocean, that's P-Town. And we love to go down there and go birding because we're great birders. But Marshfield has so many beautiful spots. It's the woods of Marshfield, the wonderful cart paths and trails in the woods. And we sort of grew up enjoying all these things as children, playing in them and visiting them and knowing the old people that lived here. And it's Marshfield has just a wonderful, wonderful situation. The town has the 3 rivers here, beautiful rivers. The North River being one of the most important shipbuilding. My father's family actually were shipbuildings. The Magoons had a shipyard up here at Brick Hill, and Brick Hill was up on the Pembroke side of Marshfield, and they were involved in shipbuilding for years. And eventually the family became house builders because you needed to have a house if you were going to live here. So they just turned from shipbuilding to building homes. And my father's family were very involved in the shipbuilding here in Marshfield. And actually, the Pembroke side of the river offered the best shipyards because the river came the closest to the upland. And so you did have one area here in Marshfield that was very important, which is Cornhill Lane, because the river went right up to the upland, and you could get the logs that you needed, the pine logs down to the boats, and people could get to work very easily from Cornhill Lane. And that was a big shipyard too. And we had a shipyard at Mary's, what later became known as Mary's Shipyard, which was at Little's Bridge, which is the bridge between Marshfield and Scituate. And there was another shipyard, not in Marshfield, but that was the Marshfield. And they would rig the ships down the river, and rigging them at Humrock was a very important part of shipbuilding, because they bring them down just the hull of the ship, and then they'd go into a shipyard right on the river at Humrock to actually finish getting this ship ready to go to sea. So we have such an interesting history with the shipbuilding. One of the most important books that I can think of that people can use as research, which we use a lot with shipbuilding on the North River by Briggs. And that's a wonderful, wonderful piece of writing. He has everything in it you would want to know about shipbuilding, family history, and all sorts of interesting tales, where the ships went, the people who worked on the ships, and a wonderful genealogical tool to be used when you're doing research also. So we have a lot of interesting history in town that we've all experienced.
And there are lots of stories that you can tell about this
Oh
town.
yes, and that's a book filled with stories.
Yeah.
Stories of who these people were, where they went, what they did, and some of the crazy things they did. But it's wonderful that we have it today.
What is the most forgotten fact or event in Marshfield?
Forgotten
Fact or event?
fact or event. Hmm.
Well, one of the things I would like to say about Daniel Webster being here, I mean, that's another very late part of our history, that latter part of our history, I should say, actually was that the people of Marshfield, lots of them did not accept the fact that Daniel Webster was very important. Uh, they they didn't think very highly of Webster. Perhaps his political views were not really well known by a lot of people, but there were people here that thought Webster was, well, to begin with, Webster was not a native. He came along, actually was driving by the house there, the Thomas house, and he and his wife, on his way, I guess, probably to Plymouth, somehow he got into that section of Marshfield.
He came fishing. He came to fish
Oh,
in
that's right, he
Sandwich.
came to fish. That's true. And he just loved that area of Marshfield, what now later became Webster Street. So he drove up to the door one day and he said to the Thomas family that was living there at that time, if you ever want to sell it, I want to buy this place. I mean, I just love it so. And it was one of the Thomas's sons, actually Nathaniel Ray's. I think it was his youngest son that came back from Nova Scotia after the Marshfield Revolution, when the family had to leave because they were loyal um, to the British. He, he actually said to Webster, "You can come here and visit. You can live here in the house, but we'll still live here. And you can just visit here, do as you want." And so Webster took him up on that. I think Webster lived there for 2 or 3 years before he was able to finally buy it. And he did buy the house and came to live here. But a lot of Marshfield residents were highly skeptical of Webster. One was because Webster was quite a drinker too. And of course, Marshfield was a great teetotaling town. So I think that influenced Webster's coming to live here. Later on, I think that people appreciated Webster because, again, he was a very influential person. One thing he did for Marshfield was establish the Marshfield Fair. And it was because he said one day, we should have a fair somewhere here in Marshfield because we have wonderful crops. And Webster was quite a farmer himself when he was here. And he had overseers of his farm that did a lot of the farming for him when he was in Washington. But when he came back from Washington, he was very involved with his cattle, with his land. And that was the beginning of Marshfield Fair, which took place down on the town green. It wasn't where it is today. I don't really know, I don't remember the date of the Marshfield Fair in its present location, but I presume it was in the later 1800s after Webster had died.
Well, it was when we, what was the date of the fair?
I don't.
Well, you know, we had that big parade.
1867, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was, yeah, 67.
67.
Yeah, that
so
would
that
be
must
when
have
we
been when
went.
it arrived at its present
Yeah,
location.
yeah.
But that's all in our book. So you go to the library and get the book and read about the history of Marshfield.
When did it turn from an agricultural town to?
What would?
When did it turn from an agricultural town to?
Oh, I don't know when it became known as an agricultural town.
Well, I mean,
Everyone had a small farm because that was the nature of living in this particular area. You had to have farming. Very often you did some fishing um, to bring in extra money, but almost everyone had a small farm. I don't think it was ever really known as a great agricultural town, but they established the fair here, and it remains today as one of the last in the area. The Weymouth Fair has gone. The Barnstable Fair has gone. Marshfield Fair is left. Weymouth Fair's gone. Almost all the towns that had originally had a fair. Marshfield remained because I think it was a lot because a lot had to do with the fact it had wonderful horse racing. And they built a wonderful stadium for people to sit in. And of course, the showing of the various animals was very important. Later became known as a 4-H town. I suppose it was sometime after the turn of the century, don't you think? The turn of the century was really a large event here in Marshfield. Young people left to go off. Maybe some of them went off to college, but others went off to work in the automobile industry. All kinds of other industries were popping up around New England and around the country. So many people left Marshfield because it was not a very wealthy town at that time. It was rather a poor town. Wouldn't you say that, generally speaking, Marshfield?
Yeah, it was a small
Community.
town right up till 1965, when the expressway was extended to Marshfield. That made a huge difference, and has altered the town drastically.
And that was because a lot of it was because of the busing in Boston also in the 60s. Many people did not want to send their children to school in Boston, but there was a summer home down here somewhere that was empty, and they could move right into it. So we had a huge influx of people coming out of Boston in the 60s, 65. That was one of the reasons they built the expressway, I guess, just to bring a lot of people out of Boston to the South Shore.
Yeah, it had the tracks were laid in 1870.
Yeah, the railroad. The coming of the railroad made a great difference to Marshfield because people could get out of the city, and it was hot in the summertime, and people just loved to come to the beach in the summer.
And the train came right down through Marshfield Hills by Damon's Point Road. For familiar to people today would be Damon's Point Road off of Summer Street in Marshfield Hills. And my father took the train every morning to work during the 20s and 30s.
Where did he work?
I think it was 37 that they took the tracks up.
Where did he work?
In Boston. He ran a printing company in Boston. And
He's an early commuter.
that was what the fact that the train, yeah, an early commuter, right? Exactly.
Actually, it was founded by your grandfather, the company,
Well, it was the old Colony Railway Company.
the Rapid Service.
Oh, you're on the rapid service.
Yeah.
I'm on the old Colony Railroad Company.
Okay.
Rapid Company was the printing.
The Rapid Service Press was printing, yeah. Yes.
Actually, I think what I should do here, I never really identified my mother as being both my mother and father were born at Marshfield. My mother was from an old Duxbury family. Actually, she had every single Duxbury line, I guess, that was in Marsh and Duxbury in her background. And she was Brewster, Bradford, and the whole gamut of people. And my father's family was more the Scituate line that came in, and the what eventually became Pembroke. And the Magoon family arrived here in 1666. And he came considerably after my mother's family came in 1620, although he had other lines of the Aldens mixed in with his own as time went on. So my mother was Isabel Paulding, who was born in Marshfield. Once in a while, we'll drive by the cellar hole. My mother was born in the house that the cellar hole exists today over on Old Ocean Street at the corner of Cross Street and Mount Skirgo. So actually,
What still exists?
what?
What still exists? The cellar.
West what?
You said the cellar.
The cellar hole is right
Oh, the
there in the
cellar
ground today. I can drive by it and say, my mother was born in that cellar hole. It was a house that stood there.
Oh, so it's like the foundation.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm.
What is the hardest time? What was the hardest time in Marshfield history?
The hardest time. Well, I think it was probably the Depression. Those years of the around 1930, when we went through a financial depression, and where people lost their jobs and lost their houses, and that's what off the top of my head, that's what I would think was perhaps the toughest time here.
I guess maybe I would say maybe the first year they arrived, there were people living here that came on the Mayflower. They gradually had moved up after 1636. I would say the toughest time might have been trying to establish a house just to live, I suppose, must have been a very difficult time. As Cynthia said, the Depression was a hard time. My father and mother both had left Marshfield when they were married in 1909, and they left to go elsewhere. And my father eventually built a business of a garage business selling automobiles. And of course, during the Depression, they lost not only their house first, which they had built a house in Rockland. That went, the bank took that, and second, they took the business. So it was a very difficult time for my parents to have lost both the business and the because they actually were not well-to-do people. My grandfather had been what I consider to be quite well-to-do in his building business, but my father was unfortunate at that time to have gone into the automobile industry. That was hit very hard, at that particular time. So we went through, as a family, went through a very rough period of time because of the Depression. But they came out of it. The World War II actually, in a certain sense, was a little people were better off financially because they could have these war-related jobs, which paid very good money. And my father was very lucky. He became head of the carpentry for the uh, uh, Hanover ammunition dump, and actually not the total dump, but the storage of the ammunition and the production of ammunition was right there in Hanover. And of course, that expanded to Hingham. There was a Hingham shipyard, and actually some of the other towns were also involved in the war efforts. So the war actually brought the South Shore out of a depression, uh, which very often happens when a country goes into war. They will come out of a depression because it naturally had to come out because they had to have produce and all sorts of things. Ammunition was one of the big things that was needed by the government. So one of the reasons we had tremendous blackouts here during the war is because this was a very, very important area to making certain things on for the war effort. We had the Four Rivers shipyard was a huge shipyard over there that built huge warships. They could turn them out in a matter of a year and a half because everyone worked over there. My brother became foreman of the Four Rivers shipyard when he was something like 19 years old. You know, it was a very interesting time because we had been through this horrible depression when things were really, really bad here. I grew up uh, under the auspices, I should say, of a depression. I was really what you would call a depression baby. And things were not easy at all. I mean, people have really suffered a great deal here. And I suppose Marshfield suffered too, to
Oh,
some
it
degree.
did. Oh, it did. Oh, yeah. You,
What was the first building in Marshfield?
What is the what?
What was the first building in Marshfield?
Probably Winslow's
probably
house.
Winslow's house. Right.
His little house across the street from the present Winslow house,
The site
overlooking
down
the
there,
marsh.
if you walk down that road that leads down to the marsh from the Winslow house.
Behind.
Have you ever been down
the
in?
playground in Governor Winslow? Not the newer one, but the one that's right there. If you walk straight into the woods, they've got a fit trail. Remember the fit trail?
You've never been down there, Connor.
There's a marker where
He
the
has.
where the
Oh,
house.
probably yes.
When I was like 4, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why would I remember that?
Hashtag when I was 4.
Oh,
That's wonderful. There are 2 cellar halls there. And that was where
yeah.
Cynthia and I went when we were going to start the book. We went down there to get inspiration. So we stood looking at the cellar holes in the ground.
And
there
the
are a couple of
farmland.
very interesting archaeological digs that have been done down there.
Several.
Several. I think there are at least 3.
Oh, yeah.
And the Plymouth,
And-
there, I suppose they were all at the plantation. The Dr.
Oh.
Dietz did one.
We have all those records.
Yeah, at the house.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
They
All
should
of
be
the
in the
Winslow
files.
house. That's marvelous.
But that was probably the first house. To answer your question.
It's no longer there, obviously.
Right.
Are there any local businesses or institutions that have a long history in the town that are still around?
Oh,
Well, let me see. We talked about that the
Well, the
other day, and
history
we
of
had some
Marshfield
ideas,
is
didn't
still
we?
there at the town hall. I mean, you go to the town hall and the original Marshfield records are right there. They're marvelous. It's one of the best towns in the whole country for keeping their records. They've never burned. They're there. I believe there are several towns that have lost them in fires.
They're
Yeah.
great big books.
They're
You've
wonderful
seen
books.
them.
And they're
Have you
the
ever seen them? You
original
haven't seen the
books.
original books. Yeah, well, there are about 7 volumes of them.
Yeah. And
6
we've
or
used
7
them a lot
volumes.
over the years. We used to go in there back in the 70s and use them almost continually. We've always had a wonderful group of people working at Town Hall that really cared about the town. I don't know so much about today, but this was in the past anyway.
Is there anything a bit more contemporary?
What?
Is there any business a bit more contemporary?
Oh,
Oh, somebody. Well, the Feinbergs has come and gone now.
I
What's the
think,
oldest? Taylor Lumber. The Taylor family's been long around here.
and also Rand Handy is one of the older businesses in town.
There's Henry's Fish Market in Brant Rock.
He's out
It
of
doesn't
business.
exist anymore.
What?
Does it exist
No,
anymore?
it doesn't exist now. But until
Yeah.
recent years, he
Rand
might be
Handy's about
one
the
of the
only
oldest
one I can
ones.
think of.
The Taylors,
Yeah, the Taylors.
the Feinbergs.
Of course, the Feinbergs have gone. I can't, actually,
What was Feinberg's?
Department store.
wonderful department store that stood right down where the CVS is today on that piece of land. They built this.
Exactly where the CVS is today.
And it began as Feinberg's began as an old man, a Jewish family that came to Marshfield. And old Mr. Feinberg, I can't think of his first name.
Abe.
Abe, okay. Abe would come up on North Marshfield here, up Union Street with his wagon, walking, mind you, pushing a push cart with goods in it. And he'd come by to your house and knock on the door, and the lady of the house would come out and pick out what she wanted. And finally, I guess he got too old to push it, so he built a store down there just where CVS is today. And it sort of looked like a big old house, as I remember the original store.
Yes, yeah, that's what
Yeah,
it was.
it was upstairs and downstairs. Upstairs, he had clothing. Downstairs, he had everything you could think of, hardware, all kinds of things. It was not only a clothing store, it held everything.
I just remember buying a pair of rubber boots there.
Rubber boots.
When did that close? Because I've heard people mention it who are.
Oh, it's in our book.
It's within your time here,
Yeah, because there are
practically.
people who are my age who
Yes.
remember going to Feinberg's.
Yeah,
and be like,
yeah.
How old were you?
Oh, I think he had everything you could think of. Finally, it was run by his 2 sons, 2 great young men. They were a little bit younger than Cynthia and myself. Did they go? They went to school here, didn't they?
Yeah, I think they did. As far as I
Finally,
know.
and the 2 sons came along. One was Alan, and one was, oh gosh,
I can't remember.
Alan and his brother lasted longer than Alan did. But they ran the store. They hired various people to work for them. Well-respected family, wonderful family.
Another early Jewish family was the Tobys.
Oh, yes.
And they had Toby's Hardware. And they were about where, let me see.
Across the street.
Across the street from
the First National.
Yeah.
Right there on the corner of Webster Street and Ocean Street.
Right where there's that new restaurant called Ocean spray or something.
Ocean
What
House.
used to be
Yeah.
across from the skate park, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I was trying to think of other businesses, but I think Feinberg's was the first and only department store in Marshfield. I don't think there's a department store even today
Oh,
in
no.
Marshfield.
There's not a department store anywhere. Gone is Butler's
Yeah.
in Plymouth.
Probably Kohl's would be the closest to a type of department store.
What?
Kohl's might be the closest thing to a type
Oh,
of
yeah,
department
Well,
that's right. I
yes.
guess we have to
It's
give them
sort of a
some.
bit different.
we have
But
to
you
give
could
them
get
some
everything
time.
from
You can
pins.
get anything there.
Walmart, job lot.
Yeah, sort of, well, not Job Lot, but Walmart is a type of ish.
But
It's nicer than
a department store in those days was rather an upscale thing.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. It was something brand new for Marshfield to have this little department store here because you could go there and buy everything from shoes to underwear to probably buildable building materials.
it would be more like sort of Macy's ish.
Okay.
Like Macy's when you're in New York. When you were in
But you could buy
Or Macy's,
stationery
yeah.
too,
I think
pins.
Yeah.
what are we doing? Well, that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Wow.
for this one.
All right.